Welcome to the forest of enchantment at dusk.
I'm hiding in a bush.
Come out, Ron.
Hi, peekaboo. Hi.
Because just past, it is just morning.
Surprise, it was me the whole time.
Oh, you gave me quite the start. Right, enough of that bollocks, and let us do some more bollocks like we normally do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So, Magic Morning Wood, Clive,
Hello.
Ron.
Hi, how's it going, Clive?
Yeah, good. You, Ron. How about you?
Well,
good to hear.
No, it's okay. Good. Okay,
so, yes. So, algorithm machine on, and we are responding.
What does the algorithm machine sound like?
Just like that. I didn't realize you were doing. I thought it was the machine. You sound uncannily like the real machine. I tell you what you sound like. You sound like the one of the machines that makes sweets in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The original.
Oh yeah. That's what I was kind of thinking.
How are you going for?
Yeah.
Jen, you succeeded, dude. Just you give yourself a pat on the back. Right, Phil.
In a world of imagination. How's it go again?
Watch out, Gene Wilder.
Yeah.
Ron's coming up on your anyway.
Or Timothy Chalamet, who sang the same song. And
how was he specifically? Because I know you don't much like him. How was
I don't dislike him. I just didn't like that one movie.
Listen, I'm just anyway, so I know you and you would piss on his grave if given a chance. How was he as Wonka?
I think I don't think it was that good, but I think other people thought it was really good. I heard other people really enjoyed it. I thought it was a bit, he's not Gene Wilder, right? And I think he's a pretty talented dramatic actor, but I don't think he's very funny. At least what I've seen him do when he tries to do comedy doesn't seem to come across that much. So I think it was kind of funny, but kind of not. I thought the tone of the movie was okay, but I think it didn't go far enough. I think it could have done more. And I was a little underwhelmed by it, but I can see why some people really liked it though.
Yeah, that's not going to work in today's clickbait, that reasonable review. I think we should retitle that Ron slams Wonka and Timothy Chalamet. That's what they do right nowadays to get
slam.
Yeah.
Slam.
Right. Anyway, so the last film we watched was The Lady in the Car with Glasses and a Gun and a sandwich and a cup of coffee and a donut.
And a cup of keys and some keys and a ring.
That would have been a good remake. They just listed everything. And a wallet and some coins
in the car.
And
that's her. She's just in the car pulling it.
Yeah, I'd watch.
That's all. Yeah, no.
It might work in a night of horror kind of way. So one of the
so your link was French movies also with long titles.
No. Although that would work. Actually, why not? Let's go with that. No, in that film was Stefan. Is it Stefan or Stephanie? Stefan Udran, right? She was the other main female protagonist, kind of. Well, no, not really, but she was the next after Samantha Eggar, anyway. Right. And, she's one of the people in The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie from 1972. French, Italian, Spanish by the great Spanish director Luis Bunuel. Co-written with Jean-Claude Carrière. Same year as this, actually. Ron's getting ready to do something fiendish.
No, I'm really excited to hear you explain the synopsis of this movie. I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear him try to explain this movie.
Yeah, don't temper your.
I can't wait to hear it.
It's going to be a bit of a cheat. Yes, so the same. Another film I've talked about with Nick, actually on another show, was The Monk, after the Matthew Lewis Gothic novel. So that came out the same year as this, another script by Jean-Claude Carrier, who it was supposed to be a Bunuel film, but it turned out to be made by someone else. Very interesting film, which I recommend seeing, The Monk. So this is in Bunuel's French period, his last period. He died in 1983. After this, he only had 2 more films left in him, Phantom of Liberty and That Obscure Object of Desire. So I think this is kind of considered, I mean, those are 2 good, interesting films as well, but I think this is kind of considered his last classic, then, let's put it this way, the last of his best films, and kind of a follow-on from, I don't know if you've ever seen The Exterminating Angel, which is a film he made, I think it's one of his Mexican films he made in the 60s, 1962, which is kind of the opposite of this film. In that film, there's a bunch of people who go to a dinner party and they can't...
And they just eat the whole time.
Well, no, they can't leave, and there's no food either.
Oh.
There's no food and stuff, and they can't leave. So it's a fantastic... I watching this again now and compare it, I think Exterminating Angel might actually be the superior. I really like Exterminating Angel. But so yeah, this is kind of a bit of a companion piece with this. And then later on, Alex Cox, who's a big Louis Buñuel film, he made a film called Three Businessmen, which has the same kind of riff. It's basically 3 businessmen trying to find something to eat, and they end up just walking around the globe. They turn up like in different parts of the world, and they keep trying to find something to eat, and they just can't find something to eat. It's kind of a bit more of a concentrated riff on, because there's a bit more to this film than just that, but that's the main, seems to be the main strand, is that they're going out to dinner, right? But something keeps getting in the way of them just having a normal dinner, right?
Right.
Oh yes, and that's how we begin with like a 2 couples, and they'll arrive in the with a chauffeur, because they are the bourgeoisie. After all, they turn up at someone's home to for a dinner party. It turns out, oh, it's they're there on the wrong evening. Oh, what a terrible faux pas. Faux pas? No, that's not a word.
Faux pas.
There we go.
I think faux pas, it means fake peas.
Or fish. Oh no, that was faux.
No, pois is peas.
Ah, right.
Poisson is fish.
Poisson, yeah, there we go. Anyway, it's the wrong night.
Faux pas, fake peas.
In good old traditional English. And they so then they, oh, let's go to a nearby inn. So they go to a nearby inn. Stefan Odan joins them, even though she's basically just in her pajamas. And they go and they find the inn, and they go there and they try and eat. But it turns out that the proprietor has died, and there's a wake in the back room. His dead body is there. So that's like the first bit. And then we kind of jump forward to Fernando Rey works at the ambassador of the embassy for some country called Miranda, right? I guess it's some South American country. And he's smuggling cocaine, and there's a terrorist organization after him, and there's a young woman on the street who
and there's a bunch of Nazis in Miranda too, apparently.
Yeah, and he shoots her toy poodle with a rifle. And then we jump forward to some more, again, there's some more dinner party setups, and a bishop turns up and asks to get the job as a gardener. That's one thing. And at some point, the military...
That's one thing.
The military get involved. And there's a military man who talks about his childhood, and another one talks about a dream he had. And then someone else insults Fernando Rey's country military colonel, so he shoots him, and people wake up and this is a dream and that's a dream, but it's not. And then they go out to a dinner party, and then
in a dream, and
they end up on stage at one point. And then some people turn up with machine guns and kill everyone, and then again they're back on the road looking for something to eat, right?
Just walking down the road,
and talking. Just these people know nothing, right? That's the thing. They know nothing. They just talk total bollocks about things they don't know anything about, right? They're like kind of the worst kind of people, really. They're just
of course, I mean, there's not a likable one of the bunch, right? So
they're not even like likably like mean or nasty. They're just vapid fucking bourgeois.
They're bourgeoisie, right? That's what they are, right? So.
And Michel Piccoli, some other people, there's Delphine Seyrig, Jean-Pierre Castel, Milana Vikovic, and Michel Piccoli, who I'm always happy to see, but he's not in it much. He turns up very briefly, and yeah, so it's a I suppose it's vaguely, I suppose you'd call it a surrealist film, right? Yeah, and yeah. So how did my attempt at a plot synopsis? Not too bad, considering it doesn't really have a proper. It's kind of dream logic, I suppose.
Yeah, it's very abstract and kind of like dreams within dreams and symbolism and that kind of stuff. So I was like,
yeah. How did you get on with this, Ryan? Because I was wondering, because this could go either way. I'm really interested to see what you thought of this.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how I got on with it too.
it gives you something. It's certainly a film that you kind of think about, right?
Right. Yeah. There were moments I was kind of like, I think overall I liked it. I think I'd say that it was a positive experience. I didn't dislike anything about the movie. I thought it was interesting concepts, and I mean the no storyline doesn't bother me as long as it's relatively clear what's happening. I think as long as they had like a reason for doing everything, you know what I mean? Sometimes I don't like movies that just seem like they're just being weird for the sake of being weird. You know, like
right.
This one seemed to have like a point to it, right? It seemed quite satirical. Obviously, it's very much like and there's a couple actually kind of funny parts, so I mean I thought all the actors were all pretty good. They're all kind of well did their part, and it was never boring.
No,
which is the kind of a possible failing of this kind of movie, which is like what the fuck, and then you just get kind of lose track and you kind of lose focus and you get bored. But it was always interesting, so I was always interested to see, how are they going to get thwarted from eating this time? Like what's going to happen this time, or what what's going to happen now? And it was always interesting. Like it was never what you thought would happen.
Right.
It was like, whoa, now there's a dead guy. Oh, now there's military breaking into the house. Now there's so it was so it was imaginative. It was interesting. So I think overall it worked. I didn't have too many qualms with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It was, kind of a strange journey, though, I'll say.
Yeah.
So it's not really, you're not really sure what to make of it in the end.
No, it's definitely a film that kind of stands up to repeated viewings, because I mean, this film does have an enormous reputation as well. Like, and I had seen it a couple of times before, and I did really rate it, and it is on those lists of and it's like best film you need to see before you die, and it's on the Criterion Collection, and is considered one of the best Bunuel films. But yeah, it's the kind of film they don't really make anymore as well, I think, in so much as it's very how can I say, it's not like full, it's not like weird, it's not like that. Because that's what I like about it, is it's properly surreal in so much as it's played straight. Like acting's really good. People are acting like they're in a proper drama. They're not trying to be weird, they're not trying to be strange.
No,
they're talking.
They sell it. They commit to the bit, whatever. Right?
Yeah. And things happen, and it's not like it's not like really super strange or anything. It's just something that is slightly out of place, right? And for a while you don't even think, like when the military turn up at first, and you kind of go with it because you're like, I wonder why the military. And it's only then when they're all sat around and you're thinking, hang on, what? And then someone's telling it, and then it was like, oh, sorry, everyone, they sit down to eat, and they're like, oh, we got to go, like the something, and this guy's like, oh, I had a dream. Oh, everyone, let's all sit down and listen to this guy's dream, right? It was like, you're like, oh, okay, wait a second. So this is obviously not meant to be realistic, of course, at all, right? So but it's not so. It's played very, which I really appreciate, and it's all like, it's all really well shot, and everything's like, all the production design, everything's like just, it's got, like, if you were to tune into this film on television, you didn't tune into it for like 5 minutes, you would be thinking, oh, it's some drama, you know.
Yeah.
And then turned to switch channels.
Right, yeah.
You would have no idea that you just tuned in to this very kind of weird movie, right? You just think,
bizarre
there's a
journey,
drama on
right?
the other channel. Yeah, I didn't stay with it. Yeah. So yeah, but like you actually, I find it hard to kind of exactly express why I like this film so much. But I really do, and this is my third time watching it now, and I still like it, and I still don't quite know why. But from the first time I saw it was on television, I think when I was a teenager, and I remember watching it, and I just like, what the hell is this? Like afterwards, scratching my head and like thinking about it, and then
it definitely. I mean, if its goal is to make you think, it works, because you're like, it stays with you for a little bit after that. You're like, what did I just watch? Like, what was that? You know, so I mean, in that case, it succeeds. If I had one kind of qualm, but of course, it's not really fair to judge it by today's standards versus, you know, it was made in the 60s, which is that, you know, it's, of course, it's very tired cliche to have it was all a dream, which happened several times.
Yes.
You know, but maybe it wasn't as tired in the 60s, I guess, whatever. But
I think so,
I kind of wish that they had skipped them waking up and that they just jumped to the next scene rather than having that as almost a transition or like a rationale. They almost rationalized it too much. Like they should just jump to the next scene and he's alive again, you know, or something like that, right?
Yes,
you know,
I can see that. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, now that I found out that you actually got on with this film, I would now not hesitate to definitely recommend The Exterminating Angel then, because that's a bit, that's like without I weirdly, even though that's an earlier film, I think that's dated even less.
No, really?
Yeah. No, it's definitely a fascinating. Have you seen? I can't remember. Did we do Bunuel's Simon of the Desert on this show?
I don't think so.
With the guy standing on top of the pillar in the middle of the desert. Does that sound familiar at all?
No.
Oh, okay, that's my personal favorite Bunuel film, and it's only like 45 minutes long or something as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's another one. Because I don't know if you've seen much in the way of Bunuel.
No, I've never seen this one yet. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's another great one. Exterminating Angel. I mean, he made a lot. I mean, there's a reason he's kind of revered, right? Like he made a lot of really, really great films. So yeah, certainly if you got on with this, I would recommend searching through his catalog some more. I mean, who knows? I might choose something for the next time. You might choose. I'm sure we'll get to him again.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting. So I'm glad I didn't, because I as you said, I could have gone either way on it. But I think I definitely fell down more in the positive side of it. But I do think it would be probably a rewatch, this movie, because I think you get more out of it. You probably got a lot more of it this time than the other time, right?
Yeah, because once the initial thing kind of you kind of watch it a bit more closely, because I basically, what you probably didn't know going on was that it's a kind of plotless kind of ramble. Like I was braced for that.
Right. Yeah.
I was just kind of enjoying and each thing is like little things, like I don't know why, like for some reason the bishop again, a perfect example of something that's not full on like, oh, this is going to be really zany and weird. It's just like, but the fact that the bishop turns up and wants to become the gardener is a kind of quite a strange little storyline, and his joy, like when he gets in the gardener's shed and he's just like playing with his scythe, and you think, like, why is he so pleased to be the gardener? Like, I don't understand why, but I'm enjoying it for some strange reason. So to tap into that is rare. Like, I don't know, again, why he's considered one of the great geniuses, but how Bunuel is able to like bypass conscious thought and go straight to things, and you can't explain why, is obviously a sort of talent or a genius even, right? And I still don't know what he's doing, but I'm glad he did it when he was on this earth for a while. Right. Okay then. So onwards, what was your reaction and how did you get to your choice, and what is it?
Okay, so I'm going through my third Oliver Reed movie. No, this third, fourth, third
Yeah, what did we watch before Lady with Glasses?
was the kids, the Brood.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, the Brood. So so I went through Oliver Reed again, and I went with I was just looking, I was like, oh, I might as well. I was trying to look up some of the, because I don't know much going on in that movie, the woman with the glasses and the suitcase and the shoes and
Right.
so I was like, I don't know any of these actors or actresses except for Oliver Reed, right? So and so I was like, okay, well, and I don't know any of these directors, I don't know. So I was like, I don't know much French cinema, so I was like, I'll just keep going through Oliver Reed. At least I know I can find something in his
Right.
catalog, right? And so and I went through his filmography, and I totally forgotten that he was in the Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
So had
I just forgot he was in it, right? And I was like, fuck, I want to watch that movie again. So I was like, we've never actually done a Gilliam on the show, I don't think.
No.
So I was like, it's probably about time we at least touch on him a little bit, because he bears talking about at least a little bit, right? So and I don't think I've ever gotten like a final story on where you fall on him being, so anyway, so I thought, and I have a little bit of like a history with this movie, so I was like, I wanted to revisit it again. This movie I saw when it came out in the theater back in
right, okay, I
88.
didn't.
Yeah, but it was sort of by accident that I saw it, because so it was 88. It came out, I guess, in Canada, and I was about, I guess I would have been 11, and around that time, me and my friends, this is in the late 80s when you could actually do this. We used to go to the movies like every week, right? And so like back when it wasn't like $1,000 to see a movie, right? So we used to go every week, just get some pocket, get our allowance money. We go to the movies, and I don't know why this has stuck with me, but for some reason I remembered that we had gone to see a different movie. I can't remember what movie it was. I can't figure it out, but for some reason we couldn't get into that movie. It was either we weren't old enough, or it was sold out. It was one of those two. I don't remember which one it was. And they were like, well, what else is playing? And like, oh, what is this? The Adventures of what? Right? And so we're like, oh, I guess let's give us a ticket for that. So we bought it as a default because we had nothing else to do. We were already at the theater and we couldn't get into the movie we wanted to see. And I remember, so we bought the tickets for this movie, the Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And I remember it coming out, and I was like, that was the greatest movie ever. Really? I was like, I loved this movie at the time. We were so shocked by it because it was just not what we expected, right? So, I mean, I don't think it holds up entirely as much as it did in the 80s, but it still holds up pretty well. I think it was still a good watch. Basically, of course, this is Terry Gilliam, starring John Neville as Baron Munchausen, and sorry, let me just bring it up here. And having one of the first parts for Sarah Polley was on it, and also Eric Idle and Oliver Reed, of course, was in there. Charles McCowan, who also helped write the script. A couple other Jonathan Pryce turns up. Bill Patterson, Uma Thurman in her first role. Not the first released role, but her first actually
she's like
role that she filmed
in it, right?
Yeah. And then Robin Williams, of course, and Sting.
Sting was not in it very long, is he?
No, yeah, but apparently he was like Terry Gilliam's neighbor or something, and so he just kind of showed up or something. That's what I heard. So anyway, so directed by Terry Gilliam and written by George McCowan and Terry Gilliam, based on the novel by Gottfried August Berger and Rudolf Erich Raspe. Something, I don't know if I got that right. So
it's like Sting, whenever, because he turns up in this and he's doing his very kind of buttoned down, and he's kind of just immediately starts shouting "Bellboy" at the screen, right?
Why?
Because that's the thing at Quadrophenia, isn't it?
Right, okay, yeah.
When it turns out he's the bellboy, right? That he's
right, okay,
bellboy. Yeah. So the background, you mentioned Rudolf Erich Raspe, right? So he wrote these it's actually kind of a weird, convoluted. So there was a Munchausen who was, some kind of weird aristocrat who told extremely tall tales, right?
Right, sure.
And then this Rudolf Erich Rasp kind of parodied him and created this Barry Munchausen character who did these ridiculous, this is like in the 18th century, did these kind of, ridiculous events and stuff like that. And then, but when it gets a little complicated from what I understand, because I have read some of this stuff years ago, and I would have known then if you'd asked me, but I can't remember now. But it's something along the lines of, it got translated from, I think, German, and then became a hit in like English, and then there were some like original Munchausen stories written in the same style, and then they kind of got translated back into German. So there's a whole kind of bunch of Munchausen like stories from different people, but basically it's about this show-off aristocrat soldier who tells very tall tales about military adventures that defy all
laws of physics and reality or time.
And it's interesting, even though, and we'll get into this, what we think of the film in terms of Gilliam and stuff, but in a way, of all Gilliam's films, it seems like it's almost like his most it's like his manifesto or something, isn't it? Because he's fast, because there's scenes in the film, like with Robin Williams, they're deliberately made to look like an old Georges Méliès thing, and there's a lot of talk about, oh, this is the age of reason, and they're not interested in fantasy.
And Wednesday, it's the age of reason, Wednesday.
Yes, yeah. And me and Nick talked before about a TV series that Terry Gilliam hosted back in 1995 called The Last Machine, which is about the early days of cinema. And it's a fascinating, like 5 or 6 part documentary series with loads of clips from like films from the very, very early silent days. And obviously Terry Gilliam is just fascinated by this, just pure fantasy, right? Pure fantasy. And there's an earlier Czech version of Munchausen called Baron Brazil from the 60s. It was a fantastic film. I would highly recommend, if you like this Munchausen, check out Baron Brazil. It's just amazing, and that's directed by this guy called Carl Zamen, who is like someone very deeply influenced Terry Gilliam when he started off here doing the cutout animations and stuff that were in Python and stuff. So this feels like, almost more than any of his, this feels like Gilliam's, like, this is everything Gilliam is obsessed with.
Right.
In one place. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, you can't get more Gilliam than
this one. It's a Gilliam. Gilliam's himself, right? So yeah.
Although I don't think it's his best film anyways, but it is more Gilliam you cannot get, right?
Right, sure. Basic story, I guess, is that so as you've already said, he's a guy who tells tall tales. Who starts in the theater, and the theater troupe is putting on this play version, like an 18th century version of like people moving the waves and
very elaborate, isn't it?
They're very elaborate with the sets and the moving and stuff, and and they're doing of the story of the eventually Baron Munchausen, and who's this kind of guy with a big giant nose who tells tall tales and stuff that could never really happen, but the audience is enjoying it, and they're doing it for he's the what do they call him? What is Jonathan Pryce's character's name? The right ordinary something or other. What is it? It's
Henry Salt and
no, the right ordinary Horatio Jackson.
Oh, okay.
So that's his character. So he's basically like this kind of German, kind of like, I don't know, I don't know what he was. He was just sort of like he was there to see how it was going, and he's like has some sort of like high up military standing, whatever, and he puts Sting to death just for being too heroic.
This is the Jonathan Pryce character, isn't it?
Yes, Jonathan Pryce. Yeah,
Jonathan Pryce really playing broad villain here, right?
Yeah. No, he was, which I think kind of worked in this movie a little.
Yes, it does. Yeah. I like me some Jonathan Pryce sometimes.
Yeah,
he's kind of fun.
And so like he's that broad villain. Like Sting shows up and he's like this super heroic, and he's saved a bunch of people in his in his platoon, and he, blah, 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 did all this, brave historic stuff. He's like, execute him. We can't let people, being sad, that
Yeah.
there's people who are better than them, kind of stuff, right? So
There's
keep everyone the same.
There's a little bit of, I mean, spoilers to jump ahead to the end of the film as well, where they open the gates and the barbarians are not at the gates, right? And so
Right.
there's a little bit of, and we know, obviously, because he made Brazil just before this, which was originally going to be titled 1984 and a half, right? So we know
Right.
Gilliam knows his Orwell and stuff, and this feels very much like because the setting is, I'm not exactly sure. It's supposed to be like some weird hybrid mix of like Munich and London kind
But
of.
they keep calling it the town, right?
Yeah, I think
town.
it's supposed to be just.
Yeah. The town is safe, right?
We'll get to this again later as well in terms of bits of this film you couldn't do anymore. But it's because it's old fashioned, right? So everything's old fashioned, even like the politics of it, right? So it's all about the evil Turks, right?
Yes. Yes.
Us civilization, right? So
that
walled city they're in, which is under siege from the Turks, it's neither here nor there. It's just it's modern European civilization versus the dastardly savage Turks, and that's not supposed to be taken seriously.
Right.
It's just supposed to be. It's another one of those 18th, 19th century tropes it's playing with.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Like, obviously, like Orwell, Jonathan Pryce is representing some sort of. It's in his best interest to keep everyone scared and thinking there's this forever war going on, but it's not, right?
It's not, right? Yeah. And so, and so then the real, or ostensibly the real Baron Munchausen shows up and is like, no, you're telling it all wrong. And he starts to tell, and then it kind of like jumps into the story. And but it does, but it doesn't. Like, you can't tell. Sometimes it's him telling the story, but sometimes it seems like it's actually happening to him. And then he, every time he has an adventure, he gets younger because the adventure kind of. So it's sometimes they're actually living it, and all the characters are kind of living it with him, and then sometimes it's actually just him telling the story. So you're not really sure what's happening. So but it doesn't. The little
girl, Sarah Polly, her interest is keeping it alive, basically, right? Because she's the next generation. If she wants to hear his old stories, then he's still valid, and then if she doesn't, he's not. And you've even got actually the spectre of death like flying about and almost getting the times. And yeah, like you said, there's surrogates for his kind of adventure partners in adventure. They're in the cast, right?
It's kind of like Wizard of Oz, where like they're on the farm, but they're actually
exactly.
So
there's Eric Idle, Winston Denson, and Jack Purvis from Time Bandits, right? They're like and Eric run really fast. There's a guy you could hear really well. There's a guy you can see. There's a strong man. These are like his kind of his Doc Savage like team of super
superhero, super people, right? So, and he's just like the charismatic leader, that leads them into adventures of it, right? So, and so it just has like several kind of almost vignette stories, of him just doing stuff, or like they go to that shows. He claims that the Turk battle, the war, is because of him, and it tells the story of him like sort of like not stealing, but like having a wager with him to go get this great bottle of wine, and sends Eric Idle running to go get it, and then almost cuts his head off, but instead gets back just in time, and then he uses the strong man to carry all of the gold in the treasury out of there. And even though technically that was what was agreed upon, it sort of seems like he's cheating, and so then the Sultan, he claims that that's why the Sultan is attacking them to get his money back, and then they have a thing where they get swallowed by a whale, and then they go to the moon, and they go on like a thing to find his compatriots again, and they go to the moon to find Eric Idle, who's being kept in a cage on the moon by Robin Williams' head, who doesn't even get credited this week, because I guess someone else was supposed to do it. And
Sean Connery,
and then he dropped out, and then Robin Williams just kind of like happened to be there or something, so he just didn't even get credited.
After Sean, because I don't know if you had a chance, because we'll talk about it if you did, because did you happen to have a chance to watch the Madness and Misadventures of Munchausen?
Fully intended to, but I didn't have time. But I probably will watch it.
Yeah, check it out. It's really interesting, because the making of this film is a story, as all Gilliam films seem to be, right? So Sean Connery, they decided because the role changed, he wouldn't have been right for the role. Sean Connery walked away, with Gilliam's blessing, and it was going to go to Michael Palin, but at that point they were in such danger of the production just being shut down for the second time. He like appeased them by getting a bigger name. So and Robin Williams agreed to do it for nothing as well, apparently, pretty much.
Yeah, free, but also didn't get credited.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how that ended up, was just like, okay, so it could even have, that casting could even have potentially saved the film and made sure it got completed, right? Because
sure, yeah, they were apparently like over budget before they even started filming or something.
Yeah, by millions as well.
Yeah, millions. Yeah.
It's funny. It's really interesting because I've seen a few documentaries about Gilliam, and I love hearing Gilliam talk. He's a fascinating guy, right? And Eric Idle in the doc says as well, like he says something like, I don't know why I did this film, because I knew there's two things you should never do: never be in a Stanley Kubrick film and never be in a Terry Gilliam film, because they're insane. And it's, but the thing is, when you hear Terry Gilliam talk, when he talks about exactly what happened, he's really good. I see, okay, no, I see the myth. Yeah, I know you're not in the wrong. They did that, and it all makes, and he's not the villain of the piece, but it does seem to happen again and again.
Again and again.
Every film. So there's a certain point where you start to think, like, Gilliam, do you think it might be something in you, maybe, that's causing this chaos?
Sure, yeah.
But to hear him talk about it, though, he just seems, it makes sense. No, you were hard done by Terry. Yeah, you know, it's the strangest thing.
Yeah. So yes, that was so there's of course lots of stuff, and apparently like it apparently Sarah Polley almost got like PTSD, was like almost killed a couple times or something, like super unsafe, and apparently she was like really angry at them for like years and years and years and years or something like that. So
well, it's interesting. I was reading, she's in the doc, and I've heard her talk about it as well, and she's quite measured and reasonable about it, because of course now, she went through a period, she was like a bit of an indie darling for a while, like in the Chloe Savini, Paca Posey mode, and now she's a very celebrated screenwriter director, right? The last film she made, wasn't it, like awards? It was up for awards,
something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, from her point of view, she was saying she thinks she was traumatized by it, but because she was a kid, she's kind of, she's kind of very resilient and got over it. But she also, like, it's not as if she's held a grudge or anything, but she's very aware that she was a child, and the adults should have known better,
Sure.
She was talking to someone, she bumped into someone years later who was like doing some work on the film, and he was like, I'm so sorry what happened to you. And his memory is of her like just being just terrorized, apparently being taken to some ambulance where something went wrong, and she was almost badly hurt, and just so seeing it through other people's eyes, she's like, maybe I shouldn't let them off the hook quite so. But she's quite measured about it. She's back and forth, and it's kind of fascinating, and it does bring up that whole thing, the whole theory, the auteur madman theory of the means to an end and all that. Is it, does it justify it? Does art justify almost killing people and traumatizing people? And
that person was Richard Conway, the special effects guy.
Okay, there we go. Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Another thing Eric Idle said, quote, "It was a truly horrible experience." That's the other thing he says about it. But it's quite interesting. He also just talks about basically how everyone in the film industry is insane, and that's why he doesn't make films anymore.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, it was so it's all fan. Anyway, just to continue, someone can get through the plot synopsis. So basically, he goes and he gets his people, goes through several sort of adventures, and also goes to is it in a volcano, or is it hell that Vulcan's in?
Well, they do go. No, it's not a volcano. They think it's a volcano, but it turns out to be that sea creature which swallows them, and inside,
Oh, right.
yeah, it's supposed. They say it's hell, right? And then they manage to.
No. Where Vulcan is. That's different.
Oh, where Ollie is, where Oliver Reed is. Yeah, that's.
Yes.
I don't know what that is. It's some kind of land of giants or something, and they're creating some sort of bomb or something, right? And
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where that is. So yeah, it's the island, right? Then they crashed down,
right.
and it was like some island, right? So yeah, so they're on an island, and then
is like Botticelli's Venus, right?
Basically. Yes, exactly. And he's Vulcan. He's kind of like this like rough brute who's kind of in love with his beautiful wife and stuff like that, right? And kind of.
He's actually Oliver has to be said. Oliver Reed must have liked the project because at this point in the 80s, I mean, occasionally Oliver Reed was always good, could be known to phone it in a little bit. But he seems really into this role, doesn't he?
But apparently, which you probably know from that doc, is that he was apparently drunk the whole time. Apparently, he kept holding things up because he was always drunk and wouldn't show up on time or something.
That's Oliver Reed, though, right? I mean,
that's just Oliver.
That's like taken as read.
But apparently, it was particularly bad on this movie. From what I heard, it was part of one of the delays was himself.
That is actually, oddly enough, that is a bit different from the usual, because actually now thinking about it, the one story they do tell about Oliver Reed is, yeah, even though he was fucking smashed all the time, apparently he was famous for just always turning up on time in the morning and being ready to work, right? Regardless of how much hell raising he'd been up to. But
right.
I guess maybe it was catching up to him at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So, but yeah, I thought he was pretty fun in this movie, and you don't see him do a lot of comedy. So I thought he was pretty. He was able to get the timing. I thought he was pretty fun to watch. With this, he was able to go back and forth between the really tough, Vulcan and the, like the very cowed, husband.
Yeah. This reminded me actually of him. There's stories apparently at home in his stately home or whatever. One of the things he'd love to do more than anything else was what's the pig character in Winnie the Pooh called? Is it just called
Piglet?
Piglet, doesn't it? Yes. Apparently, Oliver Reed's big party trick was to get smashed and climb up on the table and do impressions of Piglet. So, so this feels like a very kind of he's kind of playing, right? It feels like,
right. Sure. Yeah. Anyway, and so then there's a whole bunch of like cameos and stuff, and then they get through, get stuck in a whale, and then he loses his motivation, and Sarah Pauli's got to get him back, and and of course it's like the he goes to find all of his compatriots, and they've gone the other way, right? So like the guy who had the excellent hearing now can't hear anything, and the guy who had like perfect eyesight now is blind, right? Kind of, and the really strong guy is now Vulcan's like dainty, waiter, or I guess like sort of like maid, whatever, right? So anyway, and then at the end, as you said, they finally get back. He's meant to be a bit of a ladies' man as well. He kind of seduces Uma Thurman and some other ladies around the town and stuff.
Doesn't John Novel's a little bit long in the tooth to pull that stuff off,
well, it's part of the fantasy, I guess, right? So but then at the end, they go to he keeps saying, oh, the town's fine. They finally get back to the town, go to open the gates, and they're like, no, you can't open the gates because the Turks are getting in. And as you said, the Turks are not there, right? So all right, yes, right. So I mean, actually, how did you get on with this movie?
So this is an interesting one. So this is a film I really appreciate, I think, more than I enjoy. I mean, it's interesting that it's Gilliam going full family film, right? Like there's one notable, there's like a decapitation in one. It's entirely bloodless, isn't it?
Right.
It's just so it's really him, like I said, on the one hand, extremely personal, but also it is kind of his I don't know, his big epic kind of family thing that it's difficult to tell if it should because it wasn't a hit, it was a flop.
Yeah, it was,
but it wasn't, it really,
but I remember going back to my original story, which is that when we saw it, we'd never even heard of it because it was playing at the theater, but there was no marketing for this movie. Like
no.
We were like always like looking, okay, what's playing this week? We had never even heard of this movie, right? So I think the studio really
buried. They said in the doc as well.
They should have bet on it. I think
they really very few prints. and even made, and especially in North America, which would have been the big market. Because oddly enough, you know, in the UK, kind of anything Python related is bigger. Like anything with any of the Pythons in is promoted more. It just is. Right? So I remember growing up thinking Baron Munchausen was a very big film that everyone knew about because it was in the UK. But no, other places that wasn't the case.
Yeah, Baron Munchausen for me has always been like a hidden gem that I only knew about, that no one else I'd ever talked about, ever even heard of, right? So I was like, you never heard of Baron Munchausen, right? So yes,
that's interesting, because for me it was like, you know, on the par with something like the Indiana Jones films.
Sure,
yeah. But so I wrote about this in my book as well, and in that, so I also have a interesting history with the film Brazil, right? Which now I think I've come to agree with everyone else is pretty much his masterpiece. That's Terry Gilliam's best film, I think, is Brazil. Written by Charles McEwan. It's the film they made before this, right? And after Brazil, after they finally triumphed, because that's a whole, that's another story, is the Battle of Brazil. There's a whole fucking book about it, right? And finally, after they got that out, they were like, hey, hooray, we succeed. Now let's make, you know, Baron Munchausen, right? But I didn't used to get on with Brazil. I didn't like it at all. And I wrote in my first book that Adventures of Baron Munchausen is a much more interesting film than Brazil. Whereas now I've totally gone the other way. I think Brazil is actually as fantastic as everyone says it is. And Baron Munchausen, I think sadly, I enjoy it a little bit less each time I see it. Again, I have an enormous amount of goodwill towards it, and I think it's great that he even tried to do this, right? That I really appreciate the attempt, but it's just, I don't know what it is. It's not. The spectacle is there, and everything, and all the performances are good, and it's extremely well done, and it's shot in Italy, Spain. There's some studio stuff, and you know, it all looks fantastic, and but it's, I don't know, it's just it doesn't quite work for me, and it each time I see it less and less, and I'm not quite sure. I think it might be the comedy, like for instance, the Robin Williams sequence,
right?
It's just not funny. Like, it's not annoying, and it looks, I love that whole Méliès looking thing and everything, but just the actual nothing because Robin Williams is really going for it as well, right? Like, he's really but
it was all improvised apparently, right?
But nothing he says actually makes me laugh. So I'm wondering if the thing that lets it down for me is that it's very rarely funny. Like, I didn't often laugh at it, and Eric Idle's trying very hard to be kind of funny as well, and so yeah, I think it might be, there's a saying, isn't there? There's a school of thinking that the more expensive something is, the less funny it is. Like, there's very few really great comedies that are big budget extravagant. Right? There's a way of thinking, like, the bigger the budget goes up, the humor goes down, right? And I tend to kind of think that's true. Like, the films I find the funniest tend to be when there's less money involved, right? Somehow all that big spectacle, the humor kind of dissipates or something. It totally destroys any sense of timing, or, you know, something like that. So I'm wondering if that might be the thing that stops me from really liking this film, is the fact that it's supposed to be funny and it's not. So yeah,
but I don't know if the comedy is really the main part of this way. I mean, it was really more a fantasy and a family with some comedy in it. Like, even like starting off, like, I can see what you mean at the beginning, where, like, you know, it's the age of reason, Wednesday. I mean, that's like that's a proper joke, right? Very Python joke, right? You're like, okay, but then, and it never really has that kind of joke ever again, right? But you can tell that they really started with, like, oh, we got this great joke that started off, right? And they never really, but I didn't really miss the comedy. I mean, there was a little bit of comedy, but I never really expected it to be funny. And if it was good, yeah, it was like I get the Robin Williams part. I mean, the Robin Williams is sort of like a you like his comedy or you don't, right? So I mean, and Robin Williams is sort of like a I mean, he's like, I mean, he's undoubtedly one of the like most celebrated comedians of all time, but I think he's not always for everybody, right? So
No.
his stand up is not for, or definitely his improv is not for everybody. And I know, especially because he's always at 11, right? He's never calm, right?
No, no.
Have you ever seen Robin Williams' stand up? I mean, it's always
yeah, yeah.
He has like
exhausting. It's exhausting.
Yeah, he has like a table full of water bottles because he's like just so high energy, like he never comes down, never takes a break, never stops. It's just like he's showering basically on stage, right? So and I guess he's just like that when he performs, right? So he was like that too. So you either ride that wave or it's exhausting for you, right? So it's kind of either the both. And I think, I get the impression that with this one, it was sort of like it seemed a little bit kind of like off the cuff, this whole thing. Like it didn't seem like it was very planned, or it was sort of like, okay, you got this thing, your head, but you can separate from your body, and you're when you're with your body, you're kind of a sex maniac, but when you're separated, you're more enlightened, go, right? And then he's like, and then they kind of like got like 3 hours of footage and pieced it together to 20 minutes or whatever it is, right? And so
did you find his scenes funny? Did you?
In this one, I didn't this time around, but it's sort of like it wasn't laugh out loud funny, but it was like, Robin Williams' comedy. It's so recognizable as him. Like it wasn't him even playing a character. It was just Robin Williams doing a riff as this person, right? Which is sort of like you have to take it that way because you can't. I mean, maybe later when Robin Williams got more serious with like, Good Will Hunting or like Millennium Man or that kind of stuff, right? You can, or what was it called? Was it called Millennium Man? Is that right? Yeah. So,
but anyway, about that, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, when he got more serious stuff, what's that?
When it was sentimental film.
Yeah, sentimental. When he got the What Dreams May Come, like all those kind of like more like like the serious ones that came out. Then I mean, that was a different thing, right? But before that, it was like this was Robin Williams as his comedy, take it or leave it, and it became almost like you couldn't separate him from from the way he spoke or the way he acted in that case. So it was like it's just like this is a Robin Williams bit, right? And it doesn't you don't need to laugh because you're just sort of going along for the ride, if you like. So but at the same time, it works also against it because it feels a little bit outside of the movie, right? Like it feels like it's not like the rest. Everything else that Terry Gilliam does is so specific and it's so like detailed and planned, and I mean his frames are always so busy with stuff. Like that's the Gilliam thing. And so it's all like that's even back to his his art, right? With his animation, which is so much stuff in every frame, right? So much to look at, right? So and so to have this kind of section in there where it's almost like nothing to do with Terry Gilliam, it's just like it does turn it on Robin Williams and just let him go. It stands out a bit that way. I will say.
And again, it's not so much that I have a problem that it's not funny, but it's in the absence of it being funny, then I'm not quite sure what fills because it's clearly supposed to be funny. So
that part is
it's not funny. It's like I'm not like that bit just happens in front of my eyes, and I appreciate that it looks very much like a Georges Méliès thing. That's the one Gilliam thing about it that but yeah, it's but yeah, I don't think that's indicative of the film as a whole, though. I think that's
I think
it's a bit of an outlier.
It's just that one part,
yeah. I don't know what it is about the rest of it. I just I don't know. I mean, so how about you? Did it hold up? Was it still a rollicking?
Yeah, I mean, I still enjoy this movie. I still think it's a fun romp. I was considering watching with my family to see what they would think of it, but I gave up on that just because I haven't had time to really sit down and watch a movie with them these days. But so I didn't think I'd get through it in time. But maybe I may revisit with them someday. But I've also been sort of disappointed a lot recently, where I've been trying to introduce my kids to movies I loved when I was younger, and they're almost all falling flat,
Oh,
especially
really?
the comedies, especially the comedies.
Okay.
And so I was reluctant to show them this one because I thought that probably wouldn't hold up with them either.
They didn't love Police Academy 5 Assignment Miami Beach.
Yeah, like those ones, right? Um, so yeah, so I ended up just watching it myself, but yeah, I still got on with it. I still enjoyed it, but there is as you're right, there's a little bit of a law of diminishing returns on this one. It's a little bit like it's not quite. I mean, I didn't come out of the theater going, "Yeah, that was the greatest movie ever," like I did when I was 11.
Right, right.
But it was still a good watch. I think I can still find stuff to enjoy in it.
I do appreciate the attempt, certainly. Definitely you should watch that doc, though, because it is fascinating to hear about the making of the film. It's really interesting.
Sure, yeah.
It's not. So this, I suppose, he does Holy Grail, and there's the Python stuff, and then he does Jabberwocky, Time Bandits, Brazil, and then this, and then Robin Williams returns, of course, for Fisher King, right? Which is another film in a very different way. That's another film that I think I liked a lot more when I was younger. But doesn't necessarily start, but in the case of the Fisher King, I think that's more me having changed rather than the film.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, even Jabberwocky's. Have you seen Jabberwocky? Jabberwocky's kind of interesting.
Long time ago, yeah.
I remember watching that not so long ago, and what's really interesting about Jabberwocky is the look. Like the look of the film is fantastic. Like he's really used this kind of natural light thing to shoot this medieval film, and and you can really there's something about the authentic look of it which is just it's a wonderful looking film, I think, in a grotty way. But oddly enough, that's also similarly kind of not funny, not as funny as it should be, because most of his films are kind of comedies, and I get on like some I remember the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. I remember that being interesting as well, because that's the one, of course, Heath Ledger died, right? And then they had Jude Law and Johnny Depp come in to take over. And that was surprising, because it was like, oh, had I not known Heath Ledger had died, I certainly wouldn't have thought that's why they did it that way. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It was well integrated. It was kind of interesting.
Sure.
And then Zero Theorem wasn't that. So it's all actually.
Don't forget 12 Monkeys.
Yeah, again, I didn't like 12 Monkeys much, but I haven't gone back to watch that. I might have to have a look at that again. I haven't seen the Don Quixote. Grimm brother was terrible, but
Grimm, yeah, that wasn't good.
That was taken away from him.
I have you seen the documentary on the making of the Don Quixote one?
Oh yeah, from the first time they tried to make it. Yes, Man in the Lantern. Yeah, that's kind of interesting as well. Yeah. So actually, taken as the kind of interesting flop is actually more the rule rather than the exception.
Sure.
Like I think Brazil is the one, right? That's the one where he just firing on all cylinders, and it's exactly what he was supposed to make, and it's so yeah. So I suppose in a way, Baron Munchausen kind of fits it. Again, we're saying it could be No More Gilliam, so that's another way in which it could be No More Gilliam than it is. So it's obviously an essential viewing if you're at all interested in Terry Gilliam. I think it's
sure, of course,
it's in a way it's the Rosetta Stone of everything that interests him.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's a shame. It's I guess we both feel a little bit that it's a shame that it's not.
It was, but one thing I guess last thing I'll say about this was that I felt about it a little bit like thematically, like it was sort of echoing how I felt about the movie itself, which is that I have moved on. And I was remembering what it was like to be that years ago, and what the movie was for me years ago, just like the characters remembering what they were years ago. and doing your best to kind of like recapture that magic,
Right.
and always not quite getting there, or doing it in a different, trying to go about it in a roundabout way and not quite reaching the same level that you did last time, right? So it was almost interesting that it was sort of like, yeah, I was seeing my own experience reflected in the themes of the movie as well a little bit. So
Right.
yeah.
It also
But
interesting, I suppose, we touched on this, so it's worth bringing out a little bit more. It also belongs to that period of time where, you know, what do they call it? Well, one example of it is post-racial America, right? Which is that kind of late 80s into 90s thing when I've heard it now described as the kind of liberal progressive elite let their guard down a little bit, like that, you know, where we thought, hooray, we have now triumphed, so we can play around with, you know, we can do blackface ironically and, you know, stuff like that, because we thought, yeah, we're past that now. And like we were saying, this is playing into the, you know, tropes of the Turkish savages and stuff like that. And now we're at a very different point, right? And that stuff wouldn't fly in a big,
oh, the Turkish stuff, you mean?
yeah, in a big,
yeah.
As much as I understand where it's at, and I still think it's probably a bit too much for today's audiences.
Sure.
There would be so many kind of people would have so many problems and complaints with so many elements of this film if you tried to do it.
For sure.
Do it very, very differently. So that's an interesting thing, how the moods changed under the film rather than the film itself, right?
Sure. Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay, there.
Right.
And yeah, so we shall be reacting to this one next time.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd see what that's going to be.